All right, we are live. Let's leave this here. Hello, Facebook world. Let's see if this is working on this side.
Anybody hear us? Can you see us?
If you can hear us, can you give us a thumbs up?
Oh, Roma's here.
Hey, Roma.
Is it working?
Look at this. We got audio captions. Bonjour, Tammy. Thanks for joining. Just give people some time to arrive.
Oh, they can hear us.
Perfect. Oh, this looks so good.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, Tammy, Danielle.
Carol.
Got all the beautiful ladies here. Christina is here.
Hi, Christina. Yay. We had technical difficulties like seconds before we went live. I disappeared. So
Claudine jumped ship right before we were supposed to start the show.
Yeah, I was like, I'm out of here.
Sorry, ladies.
Yeah.
We're learning technology.
I can't look in the mirror. It's too early.
That's perfect. Hi, Catherine. So thank you for joining us today, guys. We are La Vie Creative Podcast, and I'm here with Claudine Hemingway. She is a writer and a distant relative of Ernest Hemingway. And we wanted to talk a little bit today about the podcast, but more especially about Marie Antoinette, because there are so many false rumors and myths about her. And we just wanted to chat a little bit about her life, because every Monday on La Vie Creative Podcast, we do a different history lesson on a famous French woman. And everybody knows Marie Antoinette. So I think it's time we dive in a little deeper. Oh, Claudine's hair is very long.
I know. Friday. Can't wait.
There's this whole pandemic thing. No haircuts allowed.
Yeah.
To start doing it yourself.
I've trimmed my bangs a couple times, and I had some of those scissors, texturing scissors, and I kind of was but I was like, don't touch.
You're a brave woman. I would, wow. That hairdo, you need a professional. Mine, I'm just like, bloop, 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 bloop.
Yeah.
The same haircut since I was born. Yeah. Oh, perfect. Debbie's here.
Hi, Debbie.
Right. Hi, Tina. Thanks for joining, guys.
Should we get everybody a few minutes to come in? Where's everybody? I know a lot of these names, but where are you guys all watching us from today?
Yeah, where are we calling in from?
I know Chicago for Miss Debbie, who hopefully has her champagne chilling.
Debbie is the queen of bubbles. Mm-hmm. Ooh, I like your glass. It's a pretty glass.
Well, Hetty is a coupe.
We got my pretty glass here, too.
Very pretty.
Mississippi,
New York, Brooklyn,
nice.
Minnesota, LA, everywhere.
I love it. How's Mississippi? It's got to be hot as heck right now in Mississippi. The Gulf Coast. At least you have the Gulf. LA. All right. So we can start chatting maybe a little bit about the Queen.
The Queen, Marie Antoinette. We today actually used the picture that said, keep calm and let them eat cake. And we had a funny conversation because when we first started talking about doing this, we were going to use a image, and I was like, she never said that.
I was like, I know.
And it kind of drives me crazy when people just attribute it to her, but that's just, what happens, of course, over time. But the tale actually goes back to far before she was ever queen. She was only 9 years old when the author Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote his biography, and it was called Confessions. And he put in there in the story about how this great queen said, let them eat cake. But it was he made it up. So it never was attributed to her. I mean, it ended up becoming attributed to her, but she never actually said it.
Yeah, the more I read about her, the more she sounds like she was a really giving person and not this terrible person history made her out to be.
Yeah, and it was easy to tie it to that because what happened on October 5th and 6th when these ladies, thousands of ladies came from Paris, they stormed Versailles, not Bastille, and they went there because there was no flour, so there was no flour or bread. So they went there. It's basically saying, where's the flour? We're hungry. We're starving. And so it was easy to, I think, over time, change that too. And it's actually it's let them eat brioche, not eat cake.
That's a good change to cake.
You want to get technical, but
we do want to get technical. And also, didn't they lose all the money to fund the American Revolution? It wasn't really the king and the queen who lost all the money for France. They already were deep in debt when they took over.
Yeah, I mean, when she was actually, they call her Madame Deficit is one of her nicknames. But actually, when she came to Versailles, the treasury was already basically empty. So there wasn't France didn't have a whole lot of money. And then Louis XVI got involved with the American Revolution and sending money to them and sending troops and everything. And so that just kind of went downhill quick.
All the money was gone. What was the most surprising thing you learned about her when you were doing your research?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think because of all of the images of Marie Antoinette, that she spent all this money, that she was so lavish, that she didn't really care about things. A lot of that stuff isn't really true. In fact, there was 4 other people in the royal family that actually spent more money on clothing than she did.
Mm-hmm.
And her brother-in-law would buy 365 pairs of shoes a year. I mean, that's my kind of guy, but
we're not going to hate on that.
We're not going to hate on that. But they also would only wear their shoes like a few times and then just throw them away.
Mm-hmm. The streets were like disgusting. They were walking through so much sewage and nasty things.
And it just had like leather soles. So there wasn't really, they weren't shoes made for, longevity.
Mm-hmm.
But, she actually wasn't the one who was spending as much money on her fashion as a lot of other people were in the royal family.
Yeah, she wasn't nearly as bad. That was really shocking to me. And I also read that she basically adopted a lot of children too. I mean, she had 4 of her own, but like when her maid died, she adopted like 3 of her children. Yeah. And she also, one of her soldiers hurt a farmer, and she ended up giving money to help heal him and support his family until he could work again. Like all kinds of crazy things I would never think about, that she was actually like a very giving person.
Yeah, she was. I mean, when they had, and we have this coming up in the podcast episode, but when they got married and then they were supposed to have a big firework display the day of their wedding, and it was too stormy and overcast in Versailles. So they waited, and they did it on May 30th, basically almost 200 years ago yesterday.
Oh, nice.
They did that in Place de la Concorde, which it was Place Louis XV, but Place de la Concorde to us now. And they had a huge firework display, and they set it off on top of this wooden scaffolding, and it set fire to the scaffolding, and it caused complete panic. And there's thousands of people there, and they were running, and horses were stomping them. And the next thing you know, there was all these people, like 300 people that died. And Louis and Marie Antoinette were so upset about it. They basically were like, gave them all the money that they personally had to the families and everybody to help them, because it was such a tragic thing.
Wow. Yeah, no, they were definitely a giving family. And for them to be so young too. I mean, she was 14 when she married Louis.
Mm-hmm. 14.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, 14 years old, which is so crazy because, I mean, at 11 years old, they started basically grooming her to be, the next queen of France. At 11.
Does anyone in our audience know how long it took them to conceive their first child? For you history buffs out there, we want to hear from you. How long did it take them to have their first baby? The whole purpose was to have a child. Definitely, Danielle. It was not normal, but normal at the same time.
Yeah, but yeah, if you were in a monarchy, it was kind of normal. Oh, look at that. I knew
Christina and Debbie say 7 years. Yeah, says 10 years. Any other guesses out there how long it took to get the baby making going? Those are actually some pretty good guesses.
Those are very good guesses.
And Debbie and Christina know their history.
They do.
You want to tell them, Claudine?
Yeah, so it was 7 years. So the night of their wedding, they put them, they go to their room, and the bishop, christens the bed, and they go and lay down in bed, and they close the curtains, and nothing happened. And nothing happened for 7 years. They didn't consummate their marriage. which was, kind of your whole reason for her to be there.
Yeah, that was like the whole purpose of her existence, actually.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of things about why. There's been a lot of stories of did he have a surgery to help fix his issue that he was having, or he didn't. I've read very compelling reports on either side of it that he didn't. He just wasn't, really that interested. He was Louis XVI was a pretty quiet guy, and he really just loved to play with his locks and go hunting. So he was like fascinated with locks and keys and everything. And so that's what he would love to just look at and read books about locks. And
I think that's a very good question that Danielle just asked about. Wait, how long did they consummate after 7 years or have a child? Apparently
consummate.
They didn't actually like get to it for 7 years.
Yep. 7 years.
And they both didn't really know what they were doing, apparently.
Yeah. So part of the problem part of like what happened when she first got there, they were all, the public was like, oh, this, she's beautiful. And it was 4 years until the people actually saw Marie Antoinette, like with their own eyes, where they saw her like in Paris. So she was kept out at court. She was kept at Versailles. And, first she was just this beautiful young woman. And then all of a sudden, as time goes on and Louis's brothers are having children, her brothers and sisters are having children, and her mother, who was kind of just horrible. I think we all know some of those, but she was pretty horrible because that was, that's the job of, a would-be queen of, a country, is to produce an heir. Yeah. So once it was very publicly known that they had problems, that they weren't, everybody talked in the whole country about how they were having problems in other countries, how they weren't sleeping together. So it kind of started to, well, what's wrong with her? So that kind of was the beginning of, it going downhill a little bit for Marie Antoinette, because, she wasn't fulfilling what she needed to do, but also what was the problem. But it also didn't help Louis much, because people were thinking, at this point, he's actually now become king and they still haven't consummated their marriage. So there was a lot of talk of like, well, if he can't take care of that, how can he actually take care of what he needs to on the throne? For the country.
I think that Marie Antoinette also had a lot of issues because the king was so boring. Most of the kings were having mistresses, they were doing things, but he didn't. So it kind of all fell on the queen. The queen was the one, because they had to have gossip about somebody. And Marie Antoinette was much more interesting.
Yeah, and that's another thing which was started to kind of come a little bit later, but you can find these pictures online, these drawings online. I wasn't going to pull up any to share, but a big thing back then is they would do these pamphlets that would include a lot of pornography. And a lot of the times the pornography was directed towards the mistress of the kings. Well, Louis didn't have any mistresses, that's for sure. So they basically, they used Marie Antoinette. And so as time went on, some of these are some of them are pretty horrible and pretty graphic, and they're just drawings.
Freedom of speech in France.
Yeah. So it definitely didn't help. It wasn't a big, none of this helped Marie Antoinette in her legacy very much at all.
I also found it interesting that she really wanted to learn how to horseback ride, but she wasn't allowed. So she rode donkeys around.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem very royal to me, on the back of a donkey.
Yeah. And she was one of the first people because she wasn't comfortable also wearing dresses and riding these donkeys. So she actually had her designer make her like riding pants. It was extremely scandalous. Women didn't wear pants.
Yeah, especially not back then. She was way before.
No.
Do you want to talk a little bit about her amazing hairdresser? I'm obsessed with this man.
So she had she had two. She had a hairdresser and her clothing designer, but her clothing designer also actually did some of her hair too. So there was Rose Bertin, and she was a fashion designer, and she just was basically she was a seamstress. She started designing clothes. She had a little shop in Paris. She through Madame du Barry, who is also, one of the rivals of Marie Antoinette, or it should be, du Barry wasn't very fond of Marie Antoinette. And then, so she would actually come and, help her and get her dressed, and then started doing these hairstyles on her. And she did this one that was up and had kind of 3 feathers in it. So it constructed her hair, and with the feathers, it almost looked like a big question mark in her, like sitting on top of her head.
What was the question?
I don't know, I don't know. Maybe I'm starting to have that happen. But she had that. And then the other one was he went by Leonardo. He was Leonard Alexis. Mm-hmm. And he came to the court, and she already had an official hairdresser, because you had an official something of everything in Versailles. But he would come and do these huge, lavish, big wigs, and he like a meter high, and sometimes weighing like 60, 70 pounds. And he did one with the ship in it. So he would do he did a ship. He did like flowers, like a cage with a bird in it, like all of these crazy different hairstyles. But the ship one he did, and I actually, let's see, I had a picture of it.
I was wondering if there's any, like, obviously there's not photographs, but like drawings.
No, I had a drawing in this book right here. Of course, I should have.
I had the same question when we talked about this earlier. Oh, wow. I can't imagine it actually look like that, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's just humongous. So, but it was to commemorate the, on June 17th, 1778, it was the first time a French ship, like, basically attacked and got a English ship just off the coast of France. So to commemorate it, she had this huge, ship wig made.
I think that's so cool. Good for her. We should start wearing more ship wigs.
I know. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But there was a great exhibit at the Conciergerie this last fall and winter, and they actually have somebody had made a model out of it out of paper. And we'll post a picture I'll put it on my website when the podcast is up. But it was pretty intricate. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty made to real life. Mm-hmm. Tina has a good question. She said, was the king perhaps more interested in men than women? This was the same question I had. I know there was a lot of rumors about that, and also that Marie Antoinette actually had a Swedish lover, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And that she had 2 children with this Swedish man and not her husband.
Yeah, I don't think it was that he was, I just don't think he was interested just in general at all. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was really with men. I think he just wasn't interested just in,
he was asexual
aspect of his marriage in any way. I mean, you have to think they were 14 and 15 years old when they got married too. And, I doubt that their parents were sitting him down and having, the birds and the bees talk.
It was just expected, what to do.
Yeah, just throw him in this room behind a curtain and, get to it.
Grandpa blesses the bed.
Yeah. But I mean, 7 years is a long time.
Yeah, Danielle said 1778 American Revolution. So yeah, that was one of the biggest things that drained France, is they actually funded our revolution because, the French were so anti-British, like they had a rival since forever. So like, oh, America's trying to get away from England. Let's help that because we don't like those guys either. Yeah. So that really made them lose a lot of money. Funding our American Revolution.
Yeah, a lot of money.
The country.
It was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but she did have, it's come out in the last few years that they think that she for sure, Axel von Fersen was her lover. I have read about Marie Antoinette for a very long time, and I always thought that they were lovers. This one book, this is one of the best books. See, everything's backwards. This book it's really old. It was actually originally done by this German author and translated. But in this book, he actually wrote this book using letters between her and her mother and vice versa. And then letters between her and Axel von Fersen. So it's really interesting. So you get if you're reading the words that they wrote to each other, yeah, I'm pretty sure something was happening.
Having an affair with this man. Yeah, her hubby wasn't about it. She found someone else.
Yeah. And that was the thing. Like, she started to just get so, 7 years, she wasn't going to his room. They had separate bedrooms, but she wasn't going to his room at night. He wasn't coming to hers. She didn't want to have that rejection. And there was obviously a lot of pressure on her to have an heir to the throne. And so, you put that with the constant rejection of him not really wanting to be with her. That's when she started just to, have, parties and play and gamble all night and be with her friends and
be a teenager.
So that's where that started happening.
I feel like that was the right time to be doing all those things.
Yeah. But he actually, Louis actually made her like the official party planner of Versailles because, that's kind of what she just wanted to do. She wanted to just, have these big parties and, spend all of her time with friends and drinking all night. She'd stay up until 5 a.m. He'd go to bed at, 10 o'clock. And so
they were opposites attract. Well, actually not really. They didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
The other thing I found really fascinating is that there was a rescue mission for when she was in prison. After they imprisoned her and they guillotined her husband, they tried to break her out.
There was before that when they were the Tuileries, there was an actual escape. They with Axel's help, Axel von Fersen actually helped put it all together, and he planned this whole thing. And it's called the Flight to Varennes, and they were actually going to go up to northern France to where they were still very pro royalty and where they thought that they could actually be safe to be there. And so they planned this whole thing, and they ended up leaving in the middle of the night at Versailles and dressed as just like common people and snuck out. She got lost leaving the Tuileries to get to like the small coach that they were then going to take to where they needed to meet everyone. And so they were put them behind like 2 hours.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I heard that they actually recognized them on a coin, like a peasant.
Yeah. So they were able to get away, and then as they stopped in these little towns, they had that Axel and these other people that they could trust actually helped them, and so they were putting like troops that they were loyal to them along the way. So they were supposed to go and just find these other troops and then take them to the next place, and they ended up stopping because they were running behind. They stopped in this little town, and somebody first recognized him, and they go on and they were like, And so they go to the next town, and it was like a pharmacist, I think it was a pharmacist who saw a coin, was just like, wait, that looks like the guy that's on the coin.
That's crazy. Yeah. Like it's like the money is what got them caught. And then also
you think of it compared to now. Like, now it's just like, oh my gosh, I think I saw George Clooney down the street. Like we know what all of these people look like. Back then, it wasn't
TV and iPhones, and you didn't see these people, you saw paintings of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. How about some of our audience? Do you guys have any questions about Marie Antoinette? Was there anything that you were curious about? Molly, I'm so happy you're loving it.
Hi, Molly.
Molly is our cook in Versailles, guys.
Yes.
She actually does cook.
I love her. I love her Instagram.
She's hanging out in Marie Antoinette's backyard every day.
I know.
No photos. Yep, no photographs, exactly.
No.
There was no way to see what people actually look like. I think that that book you shared is one of the most interesting ones that I've heard about, though.
Yeah, this is a really, really good book. I read it years and years ago, and then I've been reading it again, just when we were getting ready to do the podcast and stuff. And it's really interesting because you get a side of things that there's so many books where, they blame, there was one where she's kind of portrayed more like a Princess Diana. This one is definitely more of like, she was, in a lot of ways, she was a scapegoat for a lot of things that happened in France and in the monarchy, that she was just blamed for a lot of things, like the necklace, the affair of the necklace, and that kind of stuff, which really wasn't actually her fault. She wasn't blameless. She definitely had her things that she did, but, she wasn't really this horrible person that they kind of made her out to be.
Yeah, I think that's very true, that history is finally revealing more information there was like secret codes in the letters as well that she was writing to her lover and things like that. Oh, Phyllis is loving
Phyllis. I love you, Phyllis. She's the best.
What was the real legacy of Marie?
I know. I mean, that exhibit I saw at the Conciergerie in January was pretty amazing because a lot of it is about her legacy. I think a lot of it has to do with her, I think her fashion and what she kind of left behind in a lot of ways. She, at the time she was wearing these big lavish dresses, that Rose was making for her. But then she asked Rose one time to just make her a simple white dress. And she wanted just to be kind of plain. And so she made her this dress that she would wear a lot of times at the out at the Hameau and when she was at the Petit Trianon. And when the word got out that this dress was out, that she was wearing this, the people of France were just like horrified, like, oh, how could she be? She is the queen, and Vigée Lebrun painted her wearing that dress, and there was a huge outrage, and she had to redo the painting. But then later, that dress became all of the rage, and most of the women that were standing there, like while her head's getting chopped off, cheering for her death, were all wearing that dress.
Oh, that's terrifying.
So I think that, like, you look at how she, her style, her diamonds, these aren't real diamonds, but like her, just the way I think she lived her life, I think is kind of one of the biggest legacies left behind. And I think she's become when you think of Versailles, you think of Louis XIV and you think of Marie Antoinette. That I think when people go to Versailles, those are the two things that they're looking for. They're looking for like either Queen, the Queen Marie Antoinette or Louis XIV.
I love that she had that Austrian Hamlet built too as a reminder of home because she was from Austria. And I also read that she had the farm set up just like back home, like a little Austrian farm that you can still visit today. And her and her friends would dress up like peasants and like milk cows and like play farmer. Like that
But before they would go in there, like, it wasn't just like her traipsing out there, in her rubber boots to go milk the cows. Like she'd go out there and it would be like pristine, clean. Like they would brush down the animals. They would like, everything would be like completely like so clean. And then she'd go out there and, stroll out there. So
I was imagining her like playing farmer. I'm like, what?
Yeah. But the Hameau, I mean, the Hameau, the Hamlet, it's pretty amazing to see. It was closed for a few years for renovations. And so I think it was a year or so ago, I actually went out there to go see it. And I was so excited to go out there. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And so I would always, whenever I know I'm going to see something that I've seen so many times before in books, or I've read about it, or I've known, I always think like, I am only going to have the one time that this is going to be my first, this is my first time seeing this. So I'm always like, okay. And I like stop, take a deep breath and close my eyes. And then I'm like, okay, go soak it all in. And like, I see it and then like, I always like cry a little like, oh, just can't take it.
Yeah, but now to relive that, you can look at other people seeing it for the first time. That's what I do with the Eiffel Tower, because I see the Eiffel Tower literally every day when I take photos there. And so I like to turn my back to the Eiffel Tower and look at the tourists as they arrive. And it's like, you can relive that passion for those days. Oh, Patty said, what was the book? She missed the book title.
This one?
Mm-hmm. Show it to
See that?
Katie lives in Versailles too, guys. Oh, the ladies
so
in Versailles. Wait, so how many of you have visited Versailles? And Molly's asking favorite books for reading about Marie Antoinette. I think you're going to post that on your website, right?
Yeah, I will. Definitely, this is one of the best ones. There's another one. I think it's I can't remember her last name, but it's like Antoinette. Antoinette, I think, is her first name. She's written a few of them. Those ones are also really good. But I have like a ton of them. I have this one. I actually got at Versailles, so maybe you guys could go over there to the little gift shop. Can you see it? But it's The Day in the Life of Versailles. Comes in like a fancy little box.
Oh, yeah, that book's nice. I like the cover.
But I got this at the Petit Trianon, I think, the first time I went. But it's really neat because it has like all these pictures of,
beautiful
of Versailles and her life and fashion.
Well,
could you imagine having to wear those skirts like that? Like,
I feel like you would lose so much weight just from carrying all that weight around.
Yeah, or like, how do you get through some doorways?
Was it not hot back then? Like, weren't they sweating so hard in those wigs and those dresses?
The wigs, and then the multiple layers and the corsets and just everything. I mean, I can't imagine.
Yeah, they must have been dying in that heat. Stephanie's going to Versailles our next trip. Looks like a lot of everybody's almost been to Versailles. I definitely love the summer night fireworks too, Debbie. They're so fun. They do all kinds of events there that you can dress up, the Versailles ball, the mass ball, the fountains, you know, when they turn on all the fountains and do the night shows. It's so fun.
I haven't been out there to see the fireworks or the fountains, but I need to go do that.
Yes, that's definitely a must do. Although I think everything's canceled this year. I had bought tickets to the masked ball in June. They do a big party, all night party, and it's scheduled for next year. But the tickets
they are opening. I might actually get to put a huge list on my website because all of the museums and stuff are starting to open.
Oh, great.
Versailles opens June 6th.
Wonderful.
So it will be open. And I'm also like completely off subject, but a lot of the exhibitions, like the Christian Louboutin, which I was dying to go see, should have been over this summer, and they're pushing it through January. So some of the exhibitions that people weren't able to see because they were closed, they've pushed them so you could see them later this year.
Oh, that's great. They're going to extend everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and Christina asked, what are our feelings about Princess Lemble, who was friends with the Queen? I read a little bit that it was her best friend, the Princess Lemble.
Yeah, there was two ladies that she was very close with, and then there's and Christina's probably seen this. There's a lot of stories about that maybe they were more than friends.
Oh, interesting.
That there was, or maybe I think that was also just the talk of, against Marie Antoinette.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumors. It's like being in high school, being at the court.
Oh, especially at the court. It was probably even worse. Because there was people that, wanted to get an edge. That was the issue with Madame du Barry. Madame du Barry was the mistress of Louis XV, and she didn't like Marie Antoinette because Marie Antoinette, is now the highest ranking woman of Versailles when she came on the scene. So there was a big rivalry between the two of them. And so Marie Antoinette actually had to one time to keep the actual relations between Austria and France. Like, they hadn't consummated the marriage. They could have shipped her back and been like, forget it, we'll get somebody else. She had to completely okay, fine. And she walked up to Du Barry in the Hall of Mirrors and said, there's a lot of people at Versailles today. And she spoke those 9 words to her, and she never said anything to her again. But there was peace again in the land.
That made peace just with that. There's a lot of people here. I guess just acknowledging her existence was enough for her.
Yeah, I think that's what she had to do. Christina asked about visiting Versailles or Vaux-le-Vicomte. I love Vaux-le-Vicomte too. I mean, I've been there a couple times and it's so fantastic. You definitely don't have the crowds that you have at Versailles. I say go to both.
Yeah. If you want to avoid crowds, go to the other one, not Versailles. But I always tell people just to rent bikes in the Versailles Gardens and ride around until the afternoon, spend the morning in the garden. And then if you go to the castle, the big castle in the afternoon, it's much less crowded, not much less crowded. Because everybody goes straight to the castle. And you can buy your tickets online before, which is very smart. Definitely do that.
Yeah, you get time tickets before. I did it one time where we were everywhere else, and then we went into Versailles for the last hour and a half. And it was great because nobody was there. It was also January when we did it, but it was an hour and a half, and we had the whole place to ourselves. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with Molly on Fontainebleau too. It's very easy to get there by train. The problem with Vicomte is you need a car almost. It's hard to get to. But Fontainebleau, you can take the train, take the RER goes out there.
Yeah.
And then they have a bus that will take you to the castle. And it's so cool because I think they have more original furniture than Versailles. Fontainebleau does. Yeah. And it's always empty. There's nobody there. There's a big garden.
There's I love Fontainebleau, and they have because there's a lot of Francois Premier. He did a lot of it there, did a lot of the renovations there. Then Napoleon III did a lot of them. Napoleon itself, that's where he abdicated the throne, and they still have the furniture sitting, the table and the chairs where he actually signed his abdication.
Oh, that's
and they
cool.
have one of the only thrones of his left, the actual throne he used, set up there at Fontainebleau. And they have a really great museum, a small museum of Napoleon too.
Yeah, I always tell people Fontainebleau over Versailles if you have to choose, or if you're short on time, if you don't. Depends if you want to deal with crowds or not.
Yeah. Anywhere, Versailles always has, it kind of always has a lot of people. And it used to be go early and kind of avoid it, but I think everybody finally heard that. And I mean, I've been out there before. I think it opens at 9. I think it's open at 9. Molly could let us know. And I think I got out there about 8:15, and it was a beautiful morning and the sun was rising. So it hit Versailles and the statue of Louis XIV out front. So beautiful. I got these amazing pictures and it was really pretty. But by like 8:50, there was a couple hundred people there.
Yeah, the tour buses start unloading. I've never actually been inside the opera house. Someone was mentioning to go into the opera house, but I haven't either. I that's like an extra fee, and I haven't looked into that.
That's where they had their wedding reception, was in the opera house, and it had just been finished when they got married.
And I think they still do shows there. You can buy tickets to go see a show at the opera house inside Versailles, the chateau, which is really cool.
We need to go again.
Yes, it's opening up. Let's go when we're allowed in.
Yeah. Great. Next week.
Molly's been in. Molly, send us some pictures.
Yeah.
I love it. Did you ladies have any other questions? We're going to talk a lot more about her on the podcast. Every Monday, the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about Marie Antoinette. Quarters at night, exactly. Oh, that's good to know, Gail. Blue Fox Tours has an easy tour out there to Vicomte.
Yeah, it is a trek to get out to that one.
I think I've only seen the opera house from that little window you can peek in through the castle, and like everyone's trying to peek in, so you get like shoved out of the way.
Yeah, and I don't think they let you go in the chapel either. Like you could only look inside the chapel.
Yeah, that's that little hole they let you peek through. 9 years ago, she was in Versailles.
Hey,
this is it. Marie Antoinette. Yeah, and then also with her escape. When they tried to help her escape when she was in prison, she said she wouldn't leave her children, which I thought was really sweet. She said, what's the point of escaping if I can't bring my children?
Yeah. And then they pulled them away from her.
Yeah. But one did survive, right?
One did survive, and we'll talk about that. I think we're going to record that one on Tuesday.
Yes.
Yeah.
But tomorrow we'll have our first episode about Marie Antoinette that you guys can listen to on the podcast.
From her childhood till she was the Dauphine.
Tammy said there's an interesting video about Versailles called Versailles Dirty Secrets. Ooh, that's a good one.
Oh.
A lot of lack of hygiene. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so every Monday now I have Claudine on the show, and we do Paris history avec Hemingway. So every Monday you can listen to Claudine, and for the next 3 weeks, starting tomorrow, we're only going to talk about Marie Antoinette because there's so much to say about her. I mean, her life is crazy, and we start from her youth in Austria all the way up to her death, and her childhood lived on, and what happened to the one child who survived. And then from there, we will talk about different female artists that were French, and we've already had a lot recorded, so I'm so excited to share all this with you. There's so many fascinating women who lived in France who never got any credit that people don't really know about, that did very creative things.
Yeah, we have a huge long list going, and I think I add 2 people to the list every day.
There's so many women to talk about.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, we got to do this one. Oh, we have to do that one.
Yeah, and we're done with Van Gogh and Manet. They were cool guys. All those artists were cool. But let's talk about the ladies a little bit.
Yeah.
The ladies did a lot of stuff too.
We have Coco Chanel coming, which that's probably going to be a side of Coco Chanel not a lot of people know, and you might have definitely have a different feeling about her when you get done listening to that one.
Yeah, Coco was definitely a woman of many shades.
Yeah, and then and we have one of my favorites, Rose Valland, coming, who saved the art from.
And we're definitely talking about Zelda Fitzgerald, who is my favorite woman in history. She's fascinating. Yeah. Tina asked, "Did you have a Facebook invite as a reminder?" I do not, but I should start doing that. That's a great idea. I will start doing that. But every Monday we talk about the historic women, the people who are not around anymore, the ladies who have passed. But every Wednesday I talk to a living creative who has Parisian connections. So listen in Wednesday if you want to hear about living people, not just the dead guys. Thank you, Phyllis.
Yeah, and if you go on my website, ClaudineHemingway.com, you could subscribe to my newsletter. And so I'll mention that that always comes out on Wednesdays, but I'll always have a link and kind of give you a sneak peek at like, okay, here's what's coming up next week.
Great. Oh, Debbie asked why Zelda's my favorite. Oh, I could go on for way too long about Zelda, but she was just this crazy woman. She was the wife of Fitzgerald, the writer. And they lived in Paris during the time that Hemingway and all those fascinating people, and they were all hanging out. And she was just this wild woman. And I felt like she was just so passionate about everything she did, but almost to the point of insanity. I mean, she ended up going into a mental hospital, which is sadly how she died. She burned alive inside a mental hospital. But I just feel like she lived such a passionate life, and there's so much more to her. And you can especially understand that when you read quotes by her. She was just a very interesting woman.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's always been looked at like the woman behind F. Scott Fitzgerald. And I think she deserves a lot more than just being, and I think that's with a lot of these ladies, like they deserve to have their own moment.
Yeah, I think she was like just passionate and wild, and she was in the shadow of her husband, but so many of these women did a lot more than just followed their husbands around.
Christina, yes, Vigée Lebrun is definitely on the list. I definitely have her on the list.
What about Simone? Danielle?
Simone, I just added her. Thank you, Danielle.
There's anybody else you ladies want to hear about?
Yeah. Debbie, I don't think I could answer that. I think my favorite French woman changes like every 20 minutes. I don't know. I mean, but Rose Valland is pretty high up there. I think what she did, and she was just an amazing person. I don't know. There's just so many of them.
Yeah, there's so much information out there, and it's great because Claudine actually reads French too, so she can do her homework in French, which many of us cannot.
And that's where you really get a lot of the info, is when you could go and read it in French, and then whenever I'm there, I come back, and maybe when we do another video, I'll have to actually show my humongous collection of books. But when you could get like the books that they do in French, they have way more details than any book you're going to find in English about, here. And, in English, they might not even mention somebody. And in France, you could get an entire book about the person.
Yeah. Oh, Mimi has one.
Oh, yeah. She's on the list too.
Mimi knows. I love it. Well, ladies, thank you so much for chatting with us today. It was great to get to know all of you. Some of you we know in real life, calling out to my friends who showed up, who I met in person. But every Monday, starting tomorrow, you can listen to Paris History Avec a Hemingway, where me and Claudine talk famous French women. And then every Wednesday for the podcast, it's just creatives today that are in Paris. And I've interviewed everybody from cooks to photographers to painters to sculptors. There's so many creative people who are attracted to France, and we want to share their stories with you.
And also this week, both of us separately have launched our own Patreon accounts. And so if you're not familiar with those, it's what a lot of creative people use. Because, a lot of these things we do because we love them. It's a passion project, but, it's for me personally, it's time for me to take that up a notch and follow my dream and get to Paris. So, but yeah, I'll have more about that in my newsletter and stuff, and how you could support us too.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Danielle just signed up for mine today. I'm so appreciative.
Yay!
The whole point is to give you guys more information and fun things from Paris, little gifts, and also to support the podcast. So thank you for your support, and thanks for tuning in today. And also don't forget, we are starting our book club where we will talk about some of the books we actually talked about today. And that's in a private Facebook group, so you can sign up for our book club, and we will read about these famous French ladies and then have a Zoom call to talk about the book. So if you want to join that, please send us a message. We're happy to have you join our book club.
Yeah. And let us know if we should do this again.
Yeah. Keep us updated, ladies. And if you are watching this at a later time, not live, you leave us a comment or send us a message and we will respond. Thank you, ladies, so much.
And we'll chat everyone.
A bientôt.
A bientôt. Merci. Bisous.